The humid air clung to Kai's skin like a second shirt as he crouched behind a rusted ventilation pipe. His ragged brown coat offered little protection from the perpetual twilight that seemed to blanket the sprawling Vrath-occupied city. Below, the metallic gleam of Vrath patrol droids swept across the deserted street, their red searchlights casting menacing shadows. Kai wasn't alone. 3 other figures huddled beside him: Maya, a wiry woman with eyes that burned with a fierce defiance; Jax, a hulking ex-miner with hands scarred from years of construction turned rebellion; and finally, there was Tom, their young and nervous scout. This ragtag group, the remnants of Bravo Squad, were all that remained of the once vibrant human resistance. The Vrath Empire, with their sleek warships and advanced weaponry, had crushed humanity's rebellion with brutal efficiency. Earth, once a vibrant blue marble in the cosmos, was now a shadow of itself, choked by Vrath-operated factories and strip mines. Humans, stripped of their freedom and dignity, were relegated to menial labor, while the Vrath lorded over them. "Think they'll find the comm relay?" Maya whispered, her voice barely a rasp. Kai shook his head. "Hopefully not. Tom did good disabling their scanners." A nervous cough came from Tom. "Just doing my part." Their mission was simple: steal vital intelligence from a hidden communication relay before the Vrath realized it was malfunctioning. It was a desperate gamble, but with dwindling resources and dwindling hope, even the smallest piece of information could be a lifeline. Suddenly, the harsh screech of metal ripped through the silence. A Vrath patrol droid swiveled its head, its searchlight catching the glint of metal from Tom's discarded water flask. "Run!" Kai yelled, the word a primal scream in the oppressive atmosphere. They scattered like cockroaches into the labyrinthine network of back alleys and rusted buildings that formed the underbelly of the Vrath city. Kai, adrenaline coursing through his veins, pushed himself harder than he thought possible. He could hear the heavy thumps of the patrol droid gaining on him. He lunged into a darkened doorway just as the droid rounded the corner. Holding his breath, Kai pressed his ear against the wall. He could hear the droid whirring in frustration, its searchlight sweeping across the empty corridor. It stayed for what felt like an eternity before finally lumbering off. Kai let out a shaky breath. He had escaped, but at what cost? He was separated from his team, lost in the bowels of the Vrath city. Just as despair threatened to consume him, a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye caught his attention. A hulking figure stood shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. For a terrifying moment, Kai thought it was another Vrath droid, but something felt different. "Don't move," a raspy voice hissed in a language Kai didn't understand. Heart pounding, Kai slowly raised his hands in surrender. He hoped against hope that this wasn't the end. Kai froze, every muscle in his body tensed. The figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was humanoid in shape, but taller and broader than any human, with thick, blue-gray skin and a face dominated by a massive jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. The eerie blue glow emanated from intricate bioluminescent markings that ran down its arms and chest. Fear threatened to paralyze Kai, but the primal urge to survive pushed him forward. "I mean you no harm," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes studying Kai with an unsettling intensity. It spoke again, this time in halting, broken English. "You, human, why hiding?" Kai, surprised by the creature's ability to speak his language, cautiously explained his situation, the resistance, the Vrath, and his separation from his squad. The creature listened intently, its expression unreadable. Finally, it spoke. "I, Xylo, not friend of Vrath." A sliver of hope pierced through Kai's fear. Could this be an ally? But the idea of an alien species rebelling against the Vrath seemed fantastical. "You're not working with them?" Kai asked hesitantly. Xylo let out a sound that resembled a growl. "Khirr, forced to serve, not agree." The name Khirr sparked a flicker of recognition in Kai's mind. Resistance whispers spoke of a conquered alien race forced to serve the Vrath as laborers and soldiers. Xylo's words hinted at a growing discontent within the Khirr ranks. "Your Khirr?" Kai asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Xylo grunted in confirmation. "You, come with me, safe, for now." Without waiting for Kai's response, Xylo turned and lumbered down a narrow side passage. Kai, torn between apprehension and a desperate need for help, had no choice but to follow. The passage Xylo led Kai through was a maze of twisting corridors and crumbling metal grates. The air grew thick with a stench of stale lubricant and something vaguely organic that made Kai wrinkle his nose. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into a cavernous chamber dimly lit by bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. Several other Khirr figures, similar to Xylo, but with varying degrees of size and bioluminescent markings, stood huddled in the center. They all turned towards Kai, their blue eyes glowing with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Xylo," one of the Khirr rumbled, its voice deeper and more guttural than Xylo's. "Who, this?" Xylo gestured towards Kai. "Human. Lost. Not enemy." The other Khirr exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Why trust outsider?" another Khirr rasped, its voice laced with distrust. Xylo stepped forward, his voice firm despite the tremor that ran through his massive frame. "He saw brutality of Vrath, understands our struggle." Kai, feeling all eyes on him, took a deep breath. "I fight the Vrath too," he declared, his voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "They took our freedom, our home. We have to stop them." A flicker of something akin to understanding passed through the Khirr's glowing eyes. Still, their expressions remained guarded. Suddenly, a low alarm blared from a hidden speaker system. Xylo tensed, his bioluminescent markings flashing red. "Vrath, patrol, we discovered." Panic surged through Kai. He was trapped, surrounded by unknown beings with a fragile alliance at best. But before he could react, Xylo grabbed his arm with surprising gentleness. "Follow," Xylo hissed, propelling Kai towards a narrow tunnel hidden behind a stack of crates. As they sprinted through the darkness, Kai realized this was more than just a chance encounter. He had stumbled upon a hidden resistance within the Khirr, a potential ally in the fight against the Vrath. But the question remained, could he trust them? And could they trust him? The cramped tunnel reeked of damp earth and stale air. Kai stumbled along, adrenaline masking the burning in his lungs. Xylo, despite his massive size, moved with surprising agility, leading the way through the darkness. "Where are we going?" Kai gasped, his voice hoarse. "Old escape route," Xylo rumbled back. "Not used. Much. Hopefully, enough." They emerged into another chamber, this one far smaller and more cluttered. Tools hung from makeshift racks, and scraps of metal littered the uneven floor. In the flickering light of a bioluminescent lamp, Kai saw several Khirr females, their blue skin adorned with intricate markings different from the males. Some cradled Khirr children, their large, luminous eyes wide with fear. A sense of overwhelming responsibility settled on Kai's shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for this hidden community, fighting for a chance at freedom, not just for humans, but for the Khirr as well. "They know about humans?" Kai asked, gesturing towards the females. Xylo shook his massive head. "Few do. Too risky. But they understand fight against Vrath." A wave of empathy washed over Kai. These Khirr, forced to live in hiding, were just as desperate for freedom as the human resistance. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from the tunnel entrance. The Khirr females huddled closer to their children, their faces etched with terror. "They found us," Xylo growled, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. Kai's heart hammered in his chest. He had no weapon, no way to defend himself or these vulnerable Khirr. But then, Xylo reached into a hidden compartment on his armed guard and pulled out a crudely fashioned energy pistol. "Stay back," Xylo hissed, his bioluminescent markings flashing red again. Kai knew he couldn't fight, but he couldn't stand idly by either. He spotted a stack of metal pipes by the wall and grabbed the heaviest one he could manage. It wouldn't be much against Vrath weaponry, but it was better than nothing. The sounds of heavy footsteps grew closer. Xylo crouched low, his eyes narrowed. Kai held his breath, the weight of the pipe digging into his palm. This fragile alliance, born out of desperation, was about to face its first real test. The tunnel entrance burst open, revealing two Vrath patrol droids. Their sleek, metallic bodies hummed with barely contained energy. Red searchlights swept across the room, momentarily blinding Kai and the Khirr. Panic threatened to consume Kai, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew a head-on fight was hopeless. He glanced at Xylo, who stood defiant, his energy pistol crackling with raw power. Just as the Vrath droids focused their scanners on Xylo, a desperate idea formed in Kai's mind. He lunged forward, swinging the metal pipe with all his might at a nearby bioluminescent lamp. The lamp shattered, spewing a shower of glowing spores into the air. The spores erupted in a blinding flash of light, momentarily overloading the Vrath droid's sensors. The droids stumbled back, their red lights flickering erratically. Xylo seized the opportunity. He raised his energy pistol and fired a single, concentrated blast. The shot struck one of the droids in the chest, causing it to sputter and collapse. Kai, emboldened by Xylo's success, scrambled to pick up a discarded energy rifle left by the fallen droid. He had never used such a weapon before, but desperation gave him courage. He aimed at the remaining droid, his hand shaking. Before he could pull the trigger, Xylo roared, "No!" Kai froze, confusion clouding his mind. What? Why not? Weapon, not for humans. Too dangerous. Xylo gestured towards the fallen droid, its metallic arm twisted at an unnatural angle. See what happens? Kai stared at the mangled droid, a new wave of fear replacing his initial surge of determination. He understood Xylo's caution. Human bodies weren't designed to handle the raw power of Vrath weaponry. Suddenly, a deafening screech resonated through the chamber. Emergency lights strobed to life, bathing the room in an ominous red glow. "Reinforcement coming," Xylo growled, his bioluminescent markings flashing frantically. There was no time to argue. Kai dropped the rifle and grabbed the metal pipe again. "What's the plan?" "Escape," Xylo roared, grabbing Kai's arm. He propelled Kai towards a small, hidden hatch in the back wall. It was barely large enough for one person, let alone two. "You, go first," Xylo rasped, his voice laced with urgency. "No way, we go together," Kai argued, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Not possible. They hunt me. You must escape. Tell others, Khirr fight with you." Xylo's words, filled with a desperate hope, resonated with Kai. He knew Xylo was right. He couldn't let Xylo's sacrifice be in vain. He squeezed Xylo's massive arm, a silent promise hanging between them. Then, with a surge of strength fueled by a mix of fear and determination, Kai squeezed through the hatch. The rough wood scraped against his back as he clambered into the darkness beyond. He had no idea where this tunnel led, but it was his only chance. As the metal hatch slammed shut behind him, shutting out the sounds of the impending battle, Kai knew his life had irrevocably changed. He wasn't just fighting for humanity anymore. He was carrying the hopes of a desperate rebellion on his shoulders, the hope of an unlikely alliance forged in the face of an oppressive regime. The tunnel behind the hatch was even smaller and more cramped than the previous one. Kai crawled on his hands and knees, the damp earth clinging to his clothes. The air grew thick and stale, making it hard to breathe. He pushed on, fueled by a desperate need to escape the Vrath and deliver Xylo's message. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a small, natural cavern. Moonlight filtered through a crack in the ceiling, casting an ethereal glow on the moss-covered rocks. Kai emerged, gasping for breath, his muscles screaming in protest. He took a moment to catch his breath and assess his surroundings. The tunnel entrance was well hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. He knew it wouldn't fool the Vrath for long, but it would buy him some time. Now, he needed to find his way back to the human resistance hideout. He had no map, and his knowledge of the Vrath-occupied city was limited. But Maya, his team scout, had ingrained basic survival tactics into them. He remembered her instructions: follow the starlight. Unlike the Vrath city's perpetual twilight, the natural caves and tunnels sometimes offered glimpses of the night sky. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kai set off, picking his way through the treacherous terrain, guided by the faint glimmer of distant stars. Hours passed in a blur of exhaustion and fear. Kai navigated through a maze of underground passages and caverns, the silence broken only by the dripping of water and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm him, he saw a faint flicker of light in the distance. Hope surged through him. Could it be the human hideout? He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, the light grew brighter, revealing a hidden doorway nestled within the rocks. Recognition flooded through Kai. This was the back entrance to their hideout, a place Maya had shown him during a training exercise. Relief washed over him, so intense it almost brought him to his knees. He had made it back. He had survived, and he carried with him the hope of a potential alliance, a desperate gamble that could change the course of the rebellion. Kai slumped through the hidden entrance and into the familiar, dimly lit confines of the human resistance hideout. Relief washed over him, a wave so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. He had escaped the clutches of the Vrath, a feat in itself, but he also carried a message, a glimmer of hope for their desperate fight. He found Maya tinkering with a makeshift radio transmitter, her face etched with worry. As soon as she saw him, relief flooded her features. "Kai, we thought you were gone," she exclaimed, rushing to his side and pulling him into a tight embrace. "I'm okay," Kai rasped, his voice hoarse from exertion. "But we have a problem." He explained his encounter with the Khirr, Xylo's bravery, and their escape from the Vrath patrol. Maya listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. "An alliance with the Khirr?" she murmured, skepticism lacing her voice. "That sounds unlikely." Kai understood her doubts. The Khirr were seen as collaborators, forced pawns in the Vrath's oppressive regime. "They're not all happy about it," Kai argued. "Xylo, he's different. He sees the Vrath for what they are, and he wants to fight back." Jax, their burly ex-miner, emerged from the shadows, his face grim. "Even if they're willing, how can we trust them? They could be leading us into a trap." Tom, the young scout, spoke up for the first time, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe they're like us, just trying to survive." Kai saw a flicker of understanding in Maya's eyes. "This could be a game changer," she admitted. "But we need to be cautious. We need to learn more about them, their capabilities, their true loyalties." A plan began to form in Kai's mind, a risky plan that hinged on trust and a shared desire for freedom. "I have an idea," he declared. He explained his plan to Maya, Jax, and Tom. The idea was audacious, bordering on reckless. But with dwindling options and a newfound hope for an alliance, they were willing to take the risk. The following days were a blur of planning and preparation. Kai shared his knowledge of the Khirr settlement gleaned from his brief encounter with Xylo. They analyzed maps of the Vrath-controlled city, searching for a way to establish contact without alerting the enemy. Meanwhile, Kai couldn't shake the image of Xylo facing the Vrath patrol alone. He knew the consequences of rebellion within the Khirr ranks could be severe. Finally, the day arrived for their risky attempt. Kai, disguised in scavenged Khirr armor, stood at the entrance to the hidden tunnel network, his heart pounding against his ribs. This was the moment of truth. Would Xylo be there? Would he be willing to trust a human again? Or would Kai walk into a trap, his hope for an alliance dashed before it even began? Taking a deep breath, Kai stepped into the darkness, the fate of the rebellion hanging in the balance. The air in the tunnel hung heavy with dampness and the scent of stale earth. Kai shuffled forward, his borrowed Khirr armor feeling bulky and unfamiliar. Every rustle, every creak of shifting rock echoed in the oppressive silence, fueling his growing anxiety. He followed the rough map Xylo had drawn on a scrap of metal, a network of tunnels only a Khirr would know. Doubt gnawed at him. Had he misinterpreted Xylo's message? Was this all a desperate gamble destined to fail? Suddenly, a faint glow flickered in the distance. Relief washed over Kai. He had found the hidden chamber. He crept forward, adrenaline surging through his veins. Peeking through a crack in the makeshift barricade, Kai saw a familiar scene: the group of Khirr he had encountered before, huddled around a flickering bioluminescent lamp. But there was no sign of Xylo. Disappointment threatened to consume him, but then a deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber. "Who there?" Kai stepped out from the shadows, his hands held up in a gesture of peace. "Xylo," he called, his voice straining to be heard above the hammering of his heart. A collective gasp arose from the assembled Khirr. Several bioluminescent markings around the chamber flashed red, signifying alarm. Then, a hulking figure emerged from the shadows, its blue-gray skin illuminated by the flickering lamp. "Human?" Xylo rumbled, his voice laced with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "It's me, Kai," he replied, stepping into the full light. "I came, like we discussed." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The other Khirr stared at Kai with a mix of curiosity and fear. Xylo stepped closer, his bioluminescent markings flashing a calming orange. "He tells truth, friend of Khirr." A low murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. A female Khirr, her face etched with worry, spoke up. "How can we trust him?" Kai understood their apprehension. He took a deep breath and spoke, his voice filled with sincerity. "We are both fighting for freedom. We have a common enemy. Together, we might have a chance." He went on to explain the human rebellion, their struggle against the Vrath, and their desperate need for an alliance. He spoke of Maya, Jax, and Tom, the hope they shared for a future free of Vrath rule. As he spoke, Kai noticed a flicker of something akin to understanding in some of the Khirr's eyes. They, too, yearned for freedom. They, too, knew the cruelty of the Vrath Empire. But trust wouldn't be built on words alone. Xylo stepped forward, his voice firm. "Humans, help Khirr escape. Then, talk of alliance." Kai knew Xylo was proposing a dangerous test, a gamble on both their parts. But the potential reward, a united front against the Vrath, outweighed the risks. "We can do that," Kai declared, a newfound determination burning in his eyes. "But we need your help. We need to know the weaknesses of the Vrath forces, their patrol patterns." A silent understanding passed between Xylo and Kai. This was the beginning of a fragile partnership, forged in the face of oppression. They had a long way to go, many obstacles to overcome, but for the first time, they weren't alone in their fight. Together, they began to plan a daring mission, a rescue operation that would test the strength of their newfound alliance and potentially spark a rebellion within the Khirr ranks. The flickering light of the bioluminescent lamp cast long shadows on the faces gathered in the hidden chamber. Kai, still clad in the borrowed Khirr armor, felt both the weight of the metal and the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The success of their rebellion, the future of both humans and Khirr, now rested on this clandestine meeting. Xylo, standing beside him, rumbled in his deep voice, outlining the layout of the Vrath detention center. He gestured at a crude map sketched on the cavern wall, its lines marking ventilation shafts and security checkpoints. "Vrath, hold captured Khirr here," Xylo explained, his bioluminescent markings flashing blue, signifying alertness. "Many forced to work in mines, others suspected of rebellion." Kai studied the map, his mind racing with possibilities. "We can't attack directly. Vrath security will be too strong." "True," Maya, her face grim, spoke up from her position behind him. "We need a distraction, something to create chaos and divert their attention." "But what, Jax?" His burly frame hunched over the map, scratched his head in frustration. A young Khirr female, her eyes glowing a vibrant green, stepped forward. "We can," Sabotage power grid. Kai's eyebrows shot up. You know how to do that? She nodded, her face determined. Vrath technology relies on specific energy flow. We can disrupt it. Cause blackout. The idea held promise. A blackout would create confusion and limit the Vrath's security capabilities. But it presented its own risks. We need to be precise, Tom, the team's tech expert, piped up. If the disruption is too strong, it could cause a system overload, trigger alarms. A tense silence filled the chamber as they considered the risks and rewards. Finally, Xylo spoke again, his voice firm. We do it. Free Khirr, weaken Vrath. This, first step in rebellion. A wave of agreement rippled through the gathered Khirr. Their bioluminescent markings pulsed a steady amber, signifying their resolve. Kai felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a symbolic act, a spark that could ignite a larger rebellion within the Khirr ranks. The plan began to take shape. Xylo and the female Khirr, whose name they learned was Nara, would lead a small team to sabotage the Vrath power grid. Meanwhile, Kai, Maya, Jax, and a select group of Khirr would infiltrate the detention center, using the blackout as cover to free the captured Khirr. The planning sessions stretched late into the night. They discussed escape routes, communication protocols, and potential contingencies. They knew the mission would be far from simple. The Vrath were a technologically superior force, and they wouldn't hesitate to use brutal force against any resistance. But with each passing moment, Kai felt a growing sense of unity. Humans and Khirr, united by a common enemy, were putting aside suspicion and fear for a chance at freedom. As dawn approached, casting a faint glow through the cracks in the tunnel entrance, Kai knew this partnership, however fragile, was their only hope. The success of the mission would not only determine the fate of the captured Khirr, but also set the stage for a larger rebellion that could reshape the power structure of the galaxy. Now, all that was left was to execute the plan, a daring operation that would test their courage, skills, and newfound alliance. The power flickered back on, bathing the sterile detention center in harsh fluorescent light. The Vrath guards, their vision restored, reacted with renewed aggression. Their weapons whirred to life, red beams spitting from their barrels. Panic threatened to consume Kai. The humans and Khirr warriors fought valiantly, but the Vrath were relentless. One by one, his comrades fell. Maya lay unconscious, a plasma blast searing her shoulder. Jax, his strength failing, grappled with a Vrath guard twice his size. Kai, his own energy reserves dwindling, fought desperately to free a young Khirr couple trapped behind a thick metal door. He swung his scavenged energy pistol, desperate to buy them more time. Suddenly, a sickening crack echoed through the room. The Vrath guard had overmatched Jax, sending the burly human sprawling to the floor. The guard turned his weapon on Kai, a cruel smile plastered on his metallic face. Just as the red beam ignited, a colossal figure slammed into the Vrath guard, sending him flying across the room with a sickening thud. Xylo, a whirlwind of blue-gray fury, stood between Kai and the fallen guard. With each earth-shattering blow, Xylo dismantled the remaining Vrath with terrifying ease. They fell like rag dolls, their advanced technology no match for his raw, primal power. Hope flickered in Kai's chest. Maybe, just maybe, they could win this. But just as the last Vrath guard crumpled to the floor, a wave of exhaustion washed over Xylo. His bioluminescent markings flickered, his movements sluggish. Kai rushed to his side, concern etched on his face. "Xylo, are you all right?" Xylo wheezed, his voice strained. "Just tired. Used too much power." A fresh wave of Vrath guards swarmed through the entrance, alerted by the commotion. Kai's heart sank. This was it. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and Xylo, their only hope, was spent. Despair threatened to consume him, but then Xylo locked eyes with Kai. A silent understanding passed between them. "We need to go," Kai rasped, his voice laced with urgency. "We can't win." Xylo straightened his massive frame, a spark of defiance igniting in his glowing eyes. A slow, confident grin stretched across his face. In a voice that rumbled through the room, barely audible above the approaching Vrath, he declared, "Nah, I'd win." With that, Xylo unleashed a final, earth-shattering burst of energy. Whether he could truly overpower the approaching Vrath horde remained to be seen. But in that moment, facing impossible odds, Xylo's declaration echoed a testament to his unwavering will and the desperate hope of a burgeoning rebellion.